Now let's go into hypothetical land here. Say the Pittsburgh Penguins move on from Tristan Jarry by hook or by crook, however they do it. Tristan Jarry is out the door and they are in the market for another number one goaltender. If the Penguins were looking for that number one goalie, of these five, who do you think is the best fit for the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Oh, those five. Uh, I I've enjoyed the Juuse Saros name quite a lot. Um, he's just provided a lot for the Predators, and he's got Vezina-Caliber skill, and he might be a little bit more affordable in terms of what these other guys can make. Jacob Markstrom could probably make a lot on the market if he rebounds and has a good year somewhere. Um, Linus Ullmark, I mean, he won the Vezina a couple years ago. He can ride that still. I mean, won the Vezina with a lot of help from Swayman. He did win the Vezina, right? I'm not just kind of speaking into the ether.
He did. He won the Vezina. Yeah.
Won the Vezina with a lot of help from Swayman, that's why I was confused by it whenever I said it. But he can ride that into a huge contract, and I just don't know if his skill and his prowess can last. Merzlikins just doesn't bring it to me, and down to just Juuse Saros being just a solid option, just a great face to fill into that role.
The problem I see with Saros, and Saravalli mentioned this in his piece, is the asking price is going to be astronomical from Barry Trotz because he doesn't have to trade Juuse Saros. He doesn't, because he does have Yaroslav Askarov, who had another stellar season at the American Hockey League. But at the same time, I mean, we saw these trade rumors about Saros last year. We're seeing him again this year. At what point does the boy who cries wolf actually see the wolf coming up to his stable, right? And at one point, does Juuse Saros actually become a player that is available? Because if he does, it's going to be expensive. So I think that rules him out in my eyes. But eventually he's going to be on the move. But I just think that, as of right now, the pressure, as Saravalli writes as well, the pressure is not on Trotz to move Juuse Saros because he is a bona fide number one, right? There is no question marks about Juuse Saros. But I think when looking at the rest of this list, you have a couple buy low candidates in Gustafsson and Merzlikins. The acquisition cost might still be a little higher because it's just what happens when you're trying to buy a younger goaltender like Gustafsson, like Merzlikins. Those guys have had some rough seasons on some questionable teams. I mean, Gustafsson's on a better team in Minnesota, but that's why I come back to Linus Ullmark. This is a guy that I've mentioned a couple of times this offseason already, that it really seems like the writing is on the wall for him to be on his way out of Boston. And if that's the case, what is the price going to be? Because everybody knows that you're trying to trade him. Everybody now knows that you had a trade in place at the NHL trade deadline for him. So that to me makes it seem like the Linus Ullmark trade price is going to go down. And the other question then becomes, what do you do on the back end of this? He has 1 year at $5 million. So even if it doesn't work out, you're buying yourself a little bit of wiggle room as to what the future of that position could be. Because what is Joel Blomqvist? We don't know. How far away is Sergei Murashev? We don't know. It gives you a year to try to figure some of the answers to these questions out. And I also think it does that in a way that shows you that you have a goaltender that at the very least can put things together to be one of, if not the best goaltenders in the regular season. The playoffs is a different animal. It's always a different animal, but the past two seasons, the Penguins haven't made it to the playoffs. So getting there in the first place, it's going to go a long way if you can bring in a goaltender of the caliber of Linus Ullmark.
Yeah, they'll need the caliber. They'll need someone who has that Vezina quality to them. That's why Linus Ullmark's a good choice. And you're right, that the cost might go down a little bit because of previous trade options. But I think that's also what makes Saros, at least in my eyes, another great option. Like, sure, he's always been talked about when will he eventually actually get traded if he ever does. But he brings that Vezina quality. He can steal you games, and he's not a big goalie, but he knows how to play the position pretty well. So I think that's sort of another big mark into his in his direction.
I was going to mention one of the two other goaltenders there, Gustafsson or Merzlikins. If you wanted to go in a different direction, if you wanted to say, hey, we have Jarry, we're going to bring in one of these guys that need a fresh start and let them battle it out as a true 1A, 1B kind of prove it type of player, a higher level of Alex Nedeljkovic, basically. But Merzlikins' contract is too much. Gustafsson's contract is too much. Merzlikins is making, I believe, over $5 million. Gustafsson's making 3.75. So unless you're getting a lot of retention, those options are out the window. So, I mean, to me, you're only pulling one of these 5 names off if you're moving out from Tristan Jarry. Saros is the peak answer. Like, that's the best goaltender on this list. It is the best going forward into the future. But I really feel situation-wise that you're going to spend less to acquire him, and also you're going to have a little bit more flexibility with what the future looks like with Linus Ullmark. So I think either of those two goaltenders would provide an upgrade over what you've gotten the past 5 years out of the goaltending position, to be completely honest. And I think that it's worth it if you look at what the Penguins need. I'm not going to go as far to say as, hey, look at the Stanley Cup final right now. Sergei Bobrovsky, $10 million. The art of paying a lot of money for a goaltender is back. It's not. But you need more than what you have had in the past 4 years, and you're going to have to pay a little bit for it. I don't think it's going to be $8, $9, $10 million, but I think you're going to have to pay an acquisition cost that's pretty high to get one of these guys. And I think that if you're the Penguins and the team you have constructed right now that is not great defensively, but hoping to be a little bit better, you're going to need a steady goaltender that has been able to be consistent throughout a season over the last couple of years. Tristan Jarry hasn't been that, whereas some of these other guys, Saros, Ullmark, I'll throw Markstrom in there, but it seems like it's predetermined that he's going to New Jersey. But, those 3 have proven to be able to, at the very least, be consistent throughout a regular season, which would help the Penguins get back into a playoff spot. And from there, who knows?
Yeah, I think even Tristan Jarry, if he can come in and be a good option and succeed and turn his game around, even he could be a good option too.
We'll have to wait and see on that one. I don't know how much faith I have in Tristan Jarry turning it around. There's been too many different instances where he's fallen short for me to have complete and utter faith in Tristan Jarry going into the next season. But obviously, with 2 weeks to go until the opening of free agency, with the start of these rumors, we're going to hear a lot more going over the next handful of days.